Welcome to my week 1 review of the second season of the Overwatch League. First up, I'm going to apologise for the lack of uploads regarding my Day 3 and Day 4 previews. As I said on Twitter, I've been dealing with a very bad flu over the past couple of days, so I took some time away from YouTube to recover. But now that I'm back and healthy, let's get into this weekly review, looking at each team individually based on their current position in the standings, as well as seeing how my predictions fared. The table itself obviously won't tell us too much at this early stage, except in a few circumstances, such as the first team we'll look at. I hate to say it, but history may look to be repeating itself for the 2019 Shanghai Dragons. They came away from their first 2 games with 2 convincing defeats, particularly to the Vancouver Titans, in a match in which they looked outclassed in all areas. This is mainly as a result of a poorly played 3-3 GOATS comp, but unless strengthened and polished in the coming weeks, could condemn them further into the season. Unlike last season, it's not all doom and gloom, as they were able to find some success running triple DPS on control and assault maps, with players like DM standing out. Moreover, given the teams they face currently sit atop the league, perhaps a more even contest in the future will bring about a first victory. Moving on to the London Spitfire, it appears that the pre-season rumours of Scrim's struggles were true, with the Spitfire looking very uncomfortable playing in the 3-3 GOATS meta. It was also notable that Birdring and Bedosen were playing at a lower level than last year on Zarya and Zen respectively. Moving forward, the Spitfire need to put some serious work into playing this meta, with their only saving grace coming from the fact that both their opponents, Philadelphia and Paris, look at home in the 3-3 meta, which cannot be said for the whole league. The Houston Outlaws, meanwhile, come off a tough week, having lost 2 series in Game 5s. The issue is very simple, but still difficult to resolve. This team has an outstanding tank lineup, with Muma a standout performer, as well as Dante, who Zarya and Sombra excelled. It is, however, the supports, in particular Raucus, who hold this team back. Time and time again, his Zen was caught out of position at the beginning of fights, or he would use Transcendence too early or too late. Unless this is resolved, Houston are going to have to rely on their tanks to carry them to any victory this season. Now we arrive at the Florida Mayhem, who in their one game confirmed almost every doubt by every analyst during the pre-season. The team looked terrible running 3-3 GOATS, particularly Zephyr, who just seemed to feed in a 4-0 crushing defeat to Atlanta. With no way to get Sire player into this lineup, it's looking like a long and rough season for the Mayhem. Equally, the same sorts of points could be made for the Washington Justice, whose sole map win came off the back of a poorly run free DPS attack by NYXL on Horizon. There were a few bright spots from Janus and Corey, but all in all the 3-3 comp looked weak, which unless addressed quickly by Wizard Yong, will leave the Justice in a similar spot to the Mayhem. The LA Valiant faced the Hangzhou Spark in their only game of the week, and looked like a solid squad led by Space, who stood out for a number of clutch plays he made on D.Va, especially when it came to eating Gravitons. More matches are needed to see where this team really stands, but the only red flag at this moment surrounds their main support, which was not played by Custer, but inexplicably Kuki, Sol's ex-sub main tank, which I did feel held them back, especially in the later, crucial team fights that could have given them the victory. Next, we move on to the Guangzhou Charge, who put on a strong performance, but were just edged out in the end by the Chengdu Hunters. The Charge, unlike other teams we talked about, didn't really seem to have a weak link in their squad, and throughout the series played very well together, with Hopper and Eileen standing out in their successful moments. We'll have to wait and see more to truly gauge the level of this team, but their Achilles heel at this moment, which ultimately led to their defeat in this series, is a tendency to be a little over-aggressive at times, which they'll want to fix before their next matches. We now reach the Dallas Fuel, who probably had the strangest week of all the teams. In their 4-0 defeat at the beginning of the week to the San Francisco Shock, they looked terrible, with Zachary, RCK and AKM all underperforming, leading many to suggest the Fuel would return to the Dallas Fuel of old. However, coming into their second match against Seoul, they looked like a completely different side, coordinating well with one another, in teamfights, especially around the use of Sombra. Moreover, AKM had a standout performance and really stood out, completely outplaying Fleta during most of the series. The question moving forward will be whether Dallas can maintain a level of consistency. The talent is clearly there, and I think the coaching staff also deserves some plaudits for the turning around of this team in the time between the two games. After Dallas, we turn to the LA Gladiators, who had a solid week as they adjust to Raw at main tank following the departure of Fisher in the off-season. In their defeat to Seoul, both teams were pretty much even, but in the end Fisher outplayed Raw. They then rectified this loss with both supports, Big Goose and Shaz, playing outstandingly in their victory over the Shock. This is definitely a strong team that looks comfortable in this 3-3 meta, with the capability to flex if need be. The only concerns that I have are the hydration often is caught out of position on the Brigitte, meaning he dies early in fights often. Also, whilst Raw hasn't played badly, his ultimates on Ryan have noticeably been very poor. They can sort out these issues moving forward. The Gladiators look set for a return to the playoffs. The Seoul Dynasty. After their 3-1 victory over the Gladiators, they received almost unanimous praise for fixing their issues of last season, with their new additions Fisher, Michelle and Jexay all playing well as the team showing a great level of flexibility. Yet, as they came up against the Dallas side, who had just been beaten 4-0 by the Shock, all the progress made seemed to just disappear. Whilst no one played well, Jexay was often killed in the early team fights, but more puzzling was that despite its success, the team refused to utilise Michelle's Sombra, while struggling against Dallas's own Sombra. It's too early to be certain, but I fear coaching decisions may be at fault for the sudden lack of flexibility moving from one game to the next, which Seoul will need to avoid unless they want a repeat of last season. As for the Boston Uprising, once again they were underestimated heading into this season. Fusions has continued his form from Team UK at the World Cup to lead one of the most polished, true 3-3 GOATS teams in the league. They played this lineup almost flawlessly in their games against the NYXL and Houston, taking the series against Houston. However, it might already be obvious at this point. At this moment in time, the traditional 3-3 GOATS is all vacant play. Little to no 3 DPS or Sombra, which as the cast has pointed out, could be exposed moving forward, especially now that their footage is out there for the rest of the league to see. We now reach the San Francisco Shock, who all but validated the hype placed on them in the preseason. Both the tank and supports complemented each other to completely dismantle a sorry Dallas side 4-0, with Sinatra playing very well on the Sario. Against the Gladiators, they were just pipped in the end, with no one majorly at fault, except that it exposed not so much a weakness, but instead a tendency that may fault them in the future. On control maps, they showed the skill and flexibility to run a multiple DPS comp. However, this is heavily telegraphed by them bringing in their talented DPS players, Striker and Rascal, who struggle in the 3-3 comp. Therefore, if a team can find a good counter to a multiple DPS comp soon, the Shock may need to rethink their strategies moving forward. Overwatch League debutants, the Atlanta Reign, exploded onto the scene with a 4-0 demolition of the Mayhem, in which Defran sent shockwaves by bringing out his Torbjorn on the well point of Ilios. Both in this series and in the narrow loss to Philadelphia Fusion, the entire Atlanta lineup played really well, and may have already entrenched themselves as a solid shout for the playoffs. Despite their loss, most of the mistakes made you can mainly put down to inexperience, or Defran grabbing no one so that Shaq can spam that he's throwing. So the future looks bright for the Reign moving forward. I'm going to group the next 3 teams together, as they're all very similar to one another. The Chengdu Hunters, Toronto Defiant and the Paris Eternal, all new expansion teams, got off to winning starts in their only games. Crucially, they have all seemed to have adapted well to the 3-3 meta, whilst also, like other top teams, being able to flexibly play other heroes and comps. The standouts for these teams were Elsa for the Hunters, Envy for the Defiant, and Cruz for the Eternal. these teams can consolidate these performances with consistent quality moving forward, their fan bases can look forward to an exciting season, but it's still too early to be sure. Now we arrive at the Vancouver Titans, aka Runaway, who at least in my opinion had the most one-sided and convincing victory of the week, quickly taking care of the Shanghai Dragons 4-0. Their own players have been saying that they are the best 3-3 GOATS team in the world, and they certainly made their best efforts to prove that in their debut match. Bumper led the line and dominated both Geguri and Gamsu, and even when the Dragons forced the Titans onto an off-meta lineup, but seemingly they hadn't practiced, they also excelled. With the quality and synergy of this lineup on show already, we only need to see it repeated against a better team to truly argue that they are now the best team in the league. Next, we have the New York Excelsior, who despite winning both their games, they themselves didn't look as if they had quite mastered the 3-3 comp fully. Their DPS stars have had to ride the bench, whilst the key performances have been left up to Nene on Zarya and Jonak on Zen. Given how close their game was against Boston, and the fact that their 3 DPS attack struggled against the Washington Justice on Horizon, it remains to be seen whether this team in this meta can gain results against the top teams. The last expansion team we have yet to look at is the Hangzhou Spark, who have ridden the momentum of their pink popularity to an impressive 2-win start against the Dragons and the Valiant. The tanks of Gushui, No Smite and Rhea have been very impressive so far, particularly at comboing ultimates with one another, and IDK has been fragging on the Lucio. If there are any criticisms for this team, it is that they have yet to be truly tested, and that Bebe, like many other Zens in the league, tends to mismanage his ultimates, which became a small issue for them during the Valiant match. Finally, we have the Philadelphia Fusion, who unlike their counterpart finalists, have continued their momentum to a very strong start. This is a meta that, given the quality of their tanks and support, really suits Philadelphia, which resulted in a convincing win over the Spitfire, and their experience was crucial to defeating Atlanta in a Game 5. Special attention and praise should be given to Boombox and Carpe, who have arguably placed themselves as currently the best at their positions in the league right now, with many highlight plays. If this momentum continues, the Fusion are a surefire bet to go as far, if not further, than last season. Before I go, let's see how I got on in my predictions for the week. I expected the first few weeks to be a little rough, given we don't truly know the skill level of any team until they take to the stage. At the end of this first week, I finished with a respectable 9-7 record, which I hope to improve on as we head into the next weeks. So thank you for watching, and look forward to some power rankings and week 2 previews in the days ahead. If there's any other content you'd like to see, please comment down below.